All right, so we're back in.
there it
Looks
goes.
like we're good, right? All right. All right. And there's nothing that we need to pass any motions related to executive session, so we move forward. Any old business? No. Rose, one thing I wanted to ask, and we can talk about this also in the financials, but at our last meeting, you were going to track the Kingstonian time separately. Is that reflected in the?
Yeah, anything that's Kingstonian, it says Kingstonian on the timesheets. If you want a total to add it up, I would have to add it up separately because again, I don't have like a perfect way to do that in our software.
Okay,
But
I
if
thought
you'd
that's
like,
what you were going to try to do for us, just to give us a picture of how much time.
Yep,
Okay.
I can add that up.
All right. That was on page 5 in our minutes from the old meeting. So, all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's still continued the amount of time. Do you want, so I can just give you an update. It's still going on. So
Yep.
I can just give you an update at the board meeting?
Yep, sounds good.
Sure.
And then the other thing from the minutes in terms of old business was Brooklyn Bottling, final payment made to Lucky Brill to zero it out.
Yeah, so I did not because I have that in the project closing affidavit, the notes about why I didn't do anything with that still. There's $50 left. They don't have a lot in our escrow, but the reason I didn't send it to them is because they had to fill out their post-closing affidavit and they actually owed us more money. So they sent us $5,500-ish. Again, all that's in the memo because I don't remember the exact dollar amount. So
Okay.
I wanted to go through it and true it up and make sure it was accurate before giving the money back. That's
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's all I had for old business. Anyone else? All right, new business, fourth quarter administrative staff time. We have already reviewed that.
Just need you to approve it.
So I have a motion to approve the administrative staff time.
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Lucky Brill, we did our Q&A already. Project post-closing affidavit update, page 7 in your packet. Okay, Rose, you want to walk us through?
Yeah, when we've been receiving the annual reporting information, it came to our attention that some of these things hadn't been closed out yet because these projects had started before I came on board. And as of last year's reporting, they were still dealing with sales tax exemptions, etc. So now this year, when we see that they've stopped using the sales tax exemption, it's obvious that they're done. But again, I think I say in here, it's not as easy to keep track of those when we don't have Low-Key Brill on site telling me construction is over. But now that it's over, we're following up. So Brooklyn Bottling, like I was saying before, we sent them the project paperwork on November 30th, and they submitted and filled it back out and sent it back to us on January 29th. Since it was the 29th, I did not get a chance to review it yet. But I plan to do that this week and compare it with the proof that they submitted. One of the issues we're going to have is part of the proof is we asked them for their audited financials to compare the fixed assets. They don't have the audited financials yet because it's for the calendar year, right? Okay. So it'll be a couple months. And I said that, that's fine. That there's nothing they can do about that. So that's part of waiting to give them the refund of their escrow. I know it's not a lot of money, but I just felt like it didn't make sense to send the money if they owe us more. In the meantime, they submitted us the check of $5,595.99 with their affidavit. So once it's all verified, we'll close out the escrow and be finished with the project.
Okay.
Henry Stout, Creative Environments, Full Moon. It goes by a lot of names, and I have a typo there. We sent the paperwork to the project on November 30th, and I've not received it back yet. So I'm going to reach out to him again. I know he had his accountant working on it at the same time he was working on the year-end reporting. So I'll just have to check with them.
But there has been some correspondence since you sent it November 30th, so it's not their radio silent. Okay.
No, it's no.
Okay.
It's not. Okay. Saugerties Hospitality, they finished building at the fourth quarter of last year, but we didn't know if they were done completely. And now I think they're done. We were double checking with them that they didn't have any more sales tax exemption for this year. They didn't send the form, but we have to just double check. Once we hear back about that, we'll send them the post-closing affidavit. The same thing for Pods, Marlboro, Route 9 distribution. And then Hudson Valley Kingston Development, obviously we know construction's not complete, that we just granted the sales tax exemption for a few more months. Star Estate construction is still not complete and they have a sales tax exemption extension as well. And then
I'm sorry,
obviously
Rose, for Star State, when is construction projected to be complete?
he told me I'd have to look at the annual reporting when I did the site visit. I want to say he said April they're planning to be done. They were behind a couple of months because they were having trouble with getting equipment from Germany for their distillery. It was a very long story, but they sent the equipment to Canada instead of to here, and then there was trouble getting it with COVID. I don't know. It was a long story.
Right.
I know they've been looking for investors as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. They've had a lot going on, but he was really optimistic about being open by April or May.
Okay.
And then Innis, obviously, again, construction's not complete, but that's being monitored by Loki Brill, so that's easy to know what's going on.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. The next item is our fourth quarter financial review starting on page 8 of your packet.
So there were a few things, I went through it, that were over budget. Nothing that really surprised me. Obviously on income, some miscellaneous fees. There was an extra sales tax extension that was provided in December that I didn't anticipate in November or October when we redid the budget. So that pushed us over budget on income. The late fees was over budget a little bit. I'm sorry, not the late fees. That was under budget because you guys ended up removing a few of them, which made sense. The project admin fees, the pass-through, ended up being a little bit over budget, but that's a wash. That's literally income and expense that matches for the most part. Then admin fees, the reason it was so under budget is because 17,000 got moved to the grants program. Other than that, would only have been about 6,000 under budget. Legal fees, we discussed the overage. Contracts for other services.
I'm sorry, Rose, I have a question about the website and marketing. We're over budget. Like what?
No, we're under budget on that one.
But what did we spend on marketing? I'm just curious what, if anything.
What it was?
Yeah.
The website, so the website and emails have like annual fees.
Got it.
And then there was a few $100s to get the website and stuff switched because it was hooked up through somebody who was a friend of a prior board member, and it was not responsive. And then everything was set up through the prior chair's email instead of through the office. So there were some fees associated with that. The contracts for other services was only over budget because we sent out 2 RFPs for admin staff and for legal. So that's the newspaper fees. So it's only $500, but that's why. The dues and fees, I know I mentioned that at the board meeting. NYS EDC raised their annual due to $850 from $750. And that's it for overages. And so that was the only reason for the overages. And we were under on travel and meals because we left the travel in there for site visits, but then obviously that was irrelevant for this year.
So when we hit, we're almost at 80% for the PPP. So when we hit 100%, we'll be done.
That or by March 31st.
Right. Okay.
There's a little bit more money than that left at the CRC thing
Right.
too.
Right. Yeah.
And what were the total fees right now to the IDA for the PPE grants program?
The admin staff fees?
So,
Yeah.
Oh, so that's it. That's on page, if you go to page 13, I
Mhm.
wanted to be really clear what I moved so that it was on the record. And Rick and I had talked about it. If you go to page 13, you see $17,100 for admin staff time and $38.50 for postage. That's a lot of 50-cent checks at $38.50.
So let me ask you something. What was in the original budget for the PPE grants?
For the IDA, 200,000, and for the CRC, 100,000.
So whatever that is, it would be over that anyway, because we have to add all these fees on there, right?
No, I took that. That's already in this figure on here.
So that's figured in. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
all righty. Aging invoices, we have a few over 90 days, right?
Okay, so yes, that's on page 10. Gardner Library, I mentioned that at the last board meeting. The $500 was the annual fee for 20. Oh boy, what year are we in now? Sorry, for 2020. And they were disputing it, and then after our site visit this year and another explanation, they've agreed that they owe it and will pay it. So that's not concerning to me. The $1,500 to Kingston Hospitality is an issue.
Yep.
That was their late fee of $1,000, and then also their $500 annual fee. And then Viking Industries, it's either his late fee or his annual fee. I'd have to look to tell you.
Any movement on them?
Well, just Gardner.
Right.
But I will tell you, Viking is looking to refi their bond. They copied me on an email, so that's something that we can certainly say, you can't get out of the bond until you pay your fees.
Okay. And what about Kingston Hospitality?
That's one of the ones that wants to close out. So I'll talk to Joe Scott about that again.
Okay.
That was something I had mentioned before today.
Okay.
And then you see there's a couple negatives. Those are just because people paid their 2021 fees that are for January 1st before the end of the fiscal year.
Got it. Okay.
The 75,000 that was due January 1st from Ulster NH Realty Golden Hill has not been paid still. Received a phone call yesterday. I have to call back. Their office was calling asking why they have to pay that and what was going on. So I'll have to call and explain that they should probably call Saul. But it was a fairly interesting conversation.
Okay, let me ask you a quick question. Did we include on any of these things where we made an arrangement to be helpful to them, that interest and things such as that?
I mentioned that yesterday. Yes, that we financed it, so it's half of it because we did that for them. So, but my plan was to call Saul today because that was at the end of the day yesterday.
Isn't that a movie called Saul?
I don't know.
If not, it should be.
What do we want to call them? A deadbeat?
Yeah. Right.
Why do they have to pay it? Okay. Thanks, Rose.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions from folks on the fourth quarter financials?
Nope.
No.
Okay. Thanks, Rose. Do we have to pass a motion to accept them,
Yeah.
or they just review?
Yeah,
That'd be good.
I'll make a motion to accept the fourth quarter financials.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, moving on to review of current policies. First one up is our procurement policy. You'll find that page 37 in the packets.
So I just want to say on page, yes, it's on page 37, but besides that, Mike had submitted some wording that he thought would be good to be added to it. And that's on page, that's at the page following the last page. That's not full at all.
So that would be page 37?
It would be page
Yeah.
41.
41. Okay,
Yep.
so this is the
Fine.
part that's new to the existing policy?
Yeah, so Mike, if you wanted to speak to that or explain what you had in mind.
Well, basically, in our procurement policy, we're going to use what's going on with Ellenbogen for an example, okay? We keep contacting him. There's not a lot of teeth to it. So definitively, if you spell it out in here a little bit more underneath a breach of contract and add that clause, that gives us a little bite back. I told Rose, I said, I'll throw something I put something together here. And I said, but I'm sure we get it over to the attorney and Joe will take a look at it, maybe tweak it. But I believe whatever the breach of contract is going to be, the addition to it, to the procurement, I believe it has to have enough substance and teeth,
Yeah.
and it needs to be in black and white. So, and I think that it protects us all in the end game. And it'll take this small claims court. We don't know if it was filed, whatever. It takes that out of the game, holds them accountable.
Yeah, I thought it was good I almost feel like more is better also when you're heading to the attorney with it, right? We'll give him everything we have and thought of, and then he can
Break it down.
make it
Yeah.
nice, yeah.
Okay, so, and you're giving them 14 days upon issue of notice, written notice. Okay.
That and what I do every day when I write a contract or something, it's like standard language in there.
Yeah.
We could notify him, we shall notify him, however the wording wants to be. Now you've given them 14 days. Upon the 14 days, we can't agree or they're still in breach. Any advance that was given to them. I think something else we may think about too, with the last thing with Ellenbogen, we did, I don't know why we would do this, but we did give them money in advance, all of it. So we're chasing our tail on that. And I think we got to be cautious moving ahead. And I'm not casting shade on any future, vendors, but, to pay somebody in full, it takes a little bit of, the initiative away for them to get it back to us in a timely fashion.
Sure.
So along those lines, we may want to be careful moving ahead on paying people in full.
Is responsible for all damages incurred by UCIDA, including lawyers' fees, to go after them to do this?
That's something I always thought chasing the attorney fees was always like, that would be fantastic if you could get your lawyer fees paid, but I don't know if it's, I don't know if we can do it or not, I mean, it would be great.
It'd be nice to try to include it in it, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Whatever terms, whatever language that Joe had used in the contract or the discussions that we had with the crane company, the court did find that we were entitled to, do you remember that? We were entitled to legal fees. And
Yeah, well,
apparently,
the court may have found that, but council didn't really want to go after it that much. And when you pinned them down, they were, so why add something else that has no teeth as far as that? If I'm not mistaken, do you remember going back?
But it may look like it has
Well,
teeth.
this court may rule this and that court may rule that. Yeah, but if you test somebody and it,
I mean, maybe, oh, Jimmy, you're frozen.
right? But, when we went back to
Why does it
It
do that?
was, well, if we get a determination from a court versus another court, so, the applicant is playing with house money. Just spitball in there,
Jimmy, just so you know, you're freezing a lot where we can't hear half of what you're saying.
thing, right? That's not a bad thing.
I don't think you can hear us.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Well, it seems to me too, if we tried to put recuperating legal fees as part of this, I don't know, it takes away that scenario where we find ourselves like, well, maybe we're just going to get tangled up in court, and they don't care because they don't have to cover the legal fee. I don't know. It just might diminish the tactic of let them come after us. It's going to cost them more in attorney fees than it is to us, the cost. And if we put something in here, we're recovering or trying to recover legal fees, it kind of takes that away from them. Right.
And touching base on what Faye brought up too, is that, it'll constitute a breach of the contract and shall result in the breaching party to be responsible for all damages. I think it leaves it so gray and open that you could argue that down the road,
Yeah.
I don't know how to, I put in there 0.2% as a penalty. It's not, you're not being real punitive, but you have to protect yourself, and there's got to be some real bite back on that,
Yeah.
So
Mike, is that kind of a standard kind of rate, if you will, per day for?
yeah, I took it out of, I deal with different companies, construction companies, rental companies, and we have purchasing and procurement policies with this kind of language in it. And, it's, some of them are more severe than that. Some are at a full 1%,
Yeah, I don't think we want to be severe as much of a deterrent, right?
That's correct. That's
Right.
exactly it. It's more than a bunch of bees attacking you than it is, yeah.
Well, yeah,
It's the same.
like
A lion.
the thought of the killers thing.
Okay. All right. I think this is a great idea to include this. All right. Procedurally, Rose, do we need to do anything, or we're moving this?
So
forward
yeah,
to-
you would move this forward to the board for a recommendation to the board, barring any changes from council, right? Or including any changes from council, I guess.
All right. So you'll have Joe look at this first, and then we'll have it for the board meeting.
Yeah, I'll be in touch with you, and then or I could be in touch with all of you, but I was gonna say you and Mike, since Mike was the one that wrote
Yep.
it, to if there were any changes, so that we have time to hopefully go back and forth with Joe a little bit, and hopefully we have time to do this before the next board meeting.
Okay.
So
Thanks, Mike.
just need a recommendation, motion for the recommendation, I think.
I'll make a motion to recommend that we take the procurement policy before the board for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
I
All right. Thanks,
I
Mike.
think that was a good change, Mike.
Yep. All right. Moving on to background check policy, getting on page 42.
So we had already revisited this and changed. I don't know that we ended up changing anything, but it came to my attention with smaller projects that's before us and any smaller projects that look to come before us. If you go on page 42, step 4, the process for application submission. If a business is already in business, they have to submit 3 years of audited financial statements to us. And I was talking to Diane, and that's really a burden. It's a financial burden. If you're looking at a multi-million dollar company, it's likely that they already have audited or reviewed financials for financing purposes. But if you're looking at a company that's literally like, maybe even just $1 million a year or a few $100,000 a year, you're talking at least a $10,000 a year expense for audited financials, at least. And I just felt like if a company doesn't have those already, to ask them to spend $30,000 on audited financials before they already come to us makes no sense. So I was wondering if you would be open to changing that to their tax returns for the last 3 years.
I was thinking a tax return would show it. Well, if they're being honest on their tax return.
Right,
know?
but I mean, they're signing off on their tax return. They're signing off that obviously that they're being honest, but also if they have a preparer preparing them, which I would imagine they do because it's a business, the preparer also has to attest that what they're submitting to the government is correct as well. So
Right.
you do have that like extra clarification. You're not
Yeah.
talking, we're not looking at like somebody's internal bookkeeping. It is still the tax return. And if there were questions, because there could be book to tax differences like depreciation, and maybe they used like section 179 and ended up with a massive loss, we want to know, why do you have such a loss on your tax return? We could just ask those questions, but it just seems, it doesn't make sense. If you have a project that comes to us and their total fee is going to be $20,000 to us, why are we going to make them spend $30,000 on financials? It seems
Well,
unfair.
I think with you overseeing it, Rose, that's really good because you would understand you could be a forensic investigator looking at their tax return, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if it goes into other hands in the future, we might have a problem with somebody not understanding that.
That's true, but my suggestion was not going to be to get rid of that requirement entirely. My suggestion was going to be to set a dollar amount, right? So like if a company's total assets, not net, let's say their total assets are under X amount, then they can simply submit the financial statement. So what if their total assets are under 5 million or under 1 million or, whatever dollar amount? But if you're talking a company that doesn't have much, it doesn't make sense to put them through all of that.
Right.
And it's one of the ways we had talked about trying to help smaller businesses that need IDA benefits. I think this is one of the ways to do that.
But then does that mean they have to be in business a certain amount of time? They can't be a startup business?
Well, if they are a startup business, so it
So for
says
new
for new
business.
businesses, they have to submit 3 years of personal tax returns for the owners, as well as current police records. But we get the police records anyway with the background check we do. And then the applicants also have to submit 3 years of tax returns for related businesses. So we're already doing the tax return thing. It doesn't make sense to make an existing business just because it's existing have to have audited financials.
Right.
Mhm.
Especially a small business is what we were
Yeah.
thinking. of.
And that makes sense since we do want to help small businesses. That
Right.
totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So what do you think would be the cap?
I don't know. I mean, I was thinking a few million would be the total fixed assets. I think it would be. You could probably even do $1 million. Most places don't have audited financials anymore because clearly nobody wants to pay for them if you don't have to have them. It's
Why don't you-
expensive.
Why don't
So
you just ask them if they have audited, if they do take them? You're right, most people don't do audited anymore, even for bank loans.
yeah, but
They
if
ask
you're
for
looking at
it.
it, yeah, but if you're looking at a huge company, I do think it is relevant, right? So
Well,
like
if somebody's who's 100 million, they say don't have audited financials, I begin to scratch my head. So what are
Yeah.
you talking about?
that's true.
but-
You're right, that's true.
So I would just leave the word audited out, ask them if they have it. If not, then ask for their tax returns. And then have you ever had, I have, but have you ever had a situation where you've asked them to fill out the IRS form that allows you to go to the IRS to check to make sure that what they're giving you is actually what they submit?
No, we've not done that. I mean, I know what you're talking
You
about.
know,
The,
like
form, whatever. It
we
gets,
used to do that because of
Okay.
fraud
yeah.
on loans. Usually it was loans under $500,000. So I don't know.
Is it cumbersome to do that and a kind of a lot of it?
It's
staff-
not. The only
No.
issue might be right now, the IRS is so behind on paperwork that might be an issue right now. I'm not sure how behind they are on requests like that, but like, for example, if you submitted an amended tax return right now, you're looking at almost a year of processing time.
So just
It's really
forget
bad.
it. Yeah, forget it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I would set a dollar amount instead of just saying if you have them, because then they could say, oh, I don't have them and only give a tax return. If you want to say 5 million, I think that's fair.
I
Anything
think
that's got
5 or 10
$5
million
million
is more
in
realistic.
fixed assets, that's a lot in fixed assets.
I think 5 or 10 million is
Or
more
in
realistic
assets.
because again, they are so expensive.
Mhm.
But what's to stop people from saying that they have less than what we're asking?
It'll be on the tax return too, Jimmy. So even if they say they have less, the tax return will show if they have assets of under X
So at
million.
that point, what do we do then? Do we make them provide their financials?
Then you could, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's no sense in doing it if someone's going to lie and you let them get away with it, I guess.
Right. Right. That, yeah.
So what do you think, Rose?
I was thinking about some of the companies that we have here. So like for size wise, to give an idea of who has, I think even $1 million in assets, you're likely going to have some kind of financials. So if you want to do 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, whatever, I think that's fine.
Well, you're talking about an audit versus not an audit, right? So it's the cost of an audit versus not having an audit, just using your tax forms. So, to me, it would have to be like 2 or 3 million at least, right?
I would
Because
go for 5.
most people
5 million.
Have that kind of, well, I don't know. But I mean, 1 million would be very little to me to have as assets.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, and the larger they are, the more expensive the audits are, right? Like I've been involved in audits that was a $75,000 audit, but they're
Right.
massive, so it just depends.
So what do we think of 3 to 5 million?
I'd go
Based
on
on
the
the
higher
discussion.
side, 5 million.
You'd go with 5? Yeah.
The other thing you have to weigh is the risk involved, right? Like, is there a difference between a 2 million or a 3 million and a $5 million project? Where do you want to draw the line on where you're willing to accept tax return versus audited?
Do we have vehicles as you move along to rectify any issue? I mean, what are we actually doing here? What are we trying to figure out?
We're trying to figure out.
It's a rhetorical question.
Mhm.
Is somebody legitimate or not? Are there avenues in the documentation or as we move along that'll prop it up?
Yeah, I think to answer Jimmy's question, you can always, if you set 5 and you look at their tax returns and it's obvious they're much bigger, then you can always ask for audited. Well, it says that,
And all due respect
if-
to the chair and the committee, what are we doing? I mean, if we have the ability to do this right now, what are we doing? Are we creating another layer for us to do here?
No, I think what we were trying to do is to decrease the potential financial burden on small businesses and not require them to have an expense of over potentially $30,000 in audited financials.
Chair, if you turn around then and you ask them again, and going back to what Faye said, with the exception of a startup or someone who's in maybe 1 or 2 years, whatever you want to pick on, they're going to give you their tax records, and it's pretty clear. You could get the information you want from there and say, okay, unless there was this huge jump at the end of December of the year prior, and now it's January, it's not going to be reflected. So,
But there are book to tax differences. So that's what I was saying. So like somebody could come to us and have massive tax losses, but not really have massive losses. So they could still be a good business. And the whole point of the background check, right, is to assure that it's a company that's going to stay in business. So what if we did, I'm just going to make up a number. What if we did 3 million, under 3 million, you ask for a tax return, but under 5 million, you ask for a tax return. But if it's over X, we reserve the right to ask for audited financials.
I agree. Do whatever you want to do, but their tax losses don't reflect the value of the company.
Right, but
It's a write-off. It's a tax loss. Just the material
Right.
equipment they can have. that's not going anywhere. So again, I'm not pushing the rock up the hill, and I'm not trying to disagree, but if we have something in place and all you got to do is put a number on it, fine. It's not like they're going to get away with it.
Right.
Well, we're just changing the verbiage to not completely just an audit. We're changing it to an audit or a tax return for a certain amount.
I agree with you 100%. Just like in some of the stuff that's out there, I'd love to see us have a de minimis amount. Why are we chasing 2 and spending 10?
Yeah. So where are we at?
I think it's a good idea. I mean, I think it's a good idea. Pick a number, whatever you want to do, but you already have you can look at somebody's tax returns and know if it's valued over $3 million, essentially. They're
do you
going
have
to
a
give you their
scale?
property, they're going to give you their holdings, they're going to.
Right. But that's what we're saying. We can look at those versus having them have to go out and get an audit. So that's what we're saying.
Is
So
the number just as a benchmark then?
Yeah, let's pick a number then. Rose. Rose.
I'm happy to say 5 million is if we can put something in that we can reserve the right to ask for audited financials. Is that if right? Does that sound fair?
I think it does. Mike, were you going to say something? I saw the lean in.
Yeah, what about a sliding scale on that? I mean, and then you're not held at just one number. Is that a possibility?
What do you mean? Do you mean like at 1 million you have a compilation, at 3 million a
Correct.
review, 5 million an audit?
Correct. Or does that complicate things?
I think it sounds like it might complicate things. So we do things under 5 million and say tax returns,
Yeah.
or if, we find after looking through tax returns that it's more than the audits are required, the audited financials. Just
Right. It's a simple statement.
right.
So
We're creating that flexibility just by saying 5 mil and under, and then we have the options in terms of and that includes from 1 to up to 5, right? Whatever.
yeah, so up to 5 million is a tax return, but we reserve the right to ask for audited financials.
Right, based on application and information that they send us.
How about the words, but not limited to?
There you go.
Mhm.
There you go.
Bingo.
I love that in contracts we have, and it says, but not limited to.
Oh, but not limited to clause. Yep. Mhm.
That's the break glass in case of emergency phrase.
That's
right.
it. That little catch-all.
Okay, so that was the only thing that I had for the background check here. I don't know if anybody else.
All right, so it's similar to what we did with the procurement, our other policy. We need to make a recommendation to the board then. Okay, so we need a motion to make that. We'll make a recommendation to the board to make the changes.
I will make that motion to the board to make the changes to a $5 million tax return, but not limited to a tax return.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Thanks, everyone. All right. Next policy is the enforcement of agency projects policy, page 44. All right. Rose, where are we with this one?
So we didn't have anything that was discussed prior or that I had specific to bring up. We just had governance had kicked it back to audit because it seemed like something that should go back to audit first. It's how we go about dealing with our projects and the follow-up every year. Like, for example, there are a couple things that do need to change. So page 45, it says part 5, so V, within 60 days. It should be within 30 or 31 days because we do all our annual reporting by January 31st.
Okay,
right? So that should be 30, I'll say 31 days. Then part 6 also should be 31 days. And again, that's just keeping with what we already do. It's just that the policy hadn't been changed to keep up with it.
I'm sorry, where was the other place on 6 too, right? Right underneath?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay,
Because all that's in what we're already doing. Again, part 7 on page 46, 31 days. It's like the third line down in that one. It's not up top. Let's see. Then in section 4 for compliance, part A1, it says that we visit an active project at least every 2 years. I don't know if you want to keep that. I mean, it gives us the option. Right now we're doing every year because it's like better practice, but you could keep the policy to say at least every 2 years.
I'm sorry, where are you, Rose?
Page 46, section 4, compliance, A1 under monitoring. The UCETA will perform a monitoring visit of every active project site at least every 2 years.
But not limited to.
But not limited to. So I kind of like that it says at least, but it's good practice that we do every year, but we at least have leeway. I don't know, whatever you think.
I think we should put at least every year.
You want to do at least every year?
I think we should.
That could create a lot more work for,
Well, we do every year right now.
Right,
oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hold on, I'm writing it down.
so that's just consistent with actual practice then.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's see. The
how about B, your annual reports, 75 days?
before there, so A3, annually collect the FTE count and stuff, right? Then we also have on here, it says, and the total dollar payroll amount at the expense of the project, a certified public accountant shall verify and certify, which we do, the payroll data submitted to the state of New York in the entities NYS 45, and then proof of workers' comp. We also, it's not just the total payroll data amount. We have them do a payroll journal because that's the only way to verify FTEs. It's the only way to verify hours. That's not on the NYS 45. So I would just change the verbiage in here to reflect, again, what we actually do, which is the payroll journal summarized by employee showing the gross wages and number of hours.
Okay,
That makes sense?
yep.
Okay, now I'm on B. Sorry, go ahead, Diane.
No, your annual report requirement within 75 days, at the end of each calendar year,
Which part are you on?
top of page 47.
Oh,
The
okay.
annual reports.
Yep. Well, that's March 15th. We
Mhm.
basically do that anyway. 75 days is about right. That's for us to get it through
Okay,
the auditors, et cetera, and come back to the board because by day 90 is when it's due to New York State.
right, okay, so that's good.
And we're probably a little bit late each year on that 75, but give or take, it's close. I think 75 is a good goal for sure.
Okay, and anything in terms of enforcement action that we need to reconsider, given prior conversations, other conversations that we've been having?
Well, I mean, how do you feel about the 80% on the jobs? I mean, I don't know that we can go back and change projects that are already in place, but I'm saying going forward, right? Do we want it to only be 80%? Do we want it to be 90% on projects that close from here out? Something like that. 80% is a lot of leeway. Because, for example, if you come to us with 20 20 jobs, or I'll use Brooklyn Bottling, for example. They're not in compliance, but just to give you, concept here, they start with, I think 135 jobs. They were going to add, I don't know, I think 20. So that's a total of 155. If you do 155 times 80%, you're looking at 124. They can literally lose 11 employees from what they came to us with and still be in compliance. Or maybe it should be 80% of what was promised, not 80% of overall, something along those
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah, maintaining
it just seems
80% of what was
crazy.
promised. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, Brooklyn Bottling, that's not what's going on there. I'm just saying those numbers, when I was going over their annual site visit with them, I'm talking to them and I'm going, oh my God, you can literally be under what you came to us with and still be in compliance.
Yeah, that's interesting. You frame it that way, because being relatively new now, I was like, why is it 80%? It seems to be a lot of wiggle room in there. Yeah.
It is, yeah. So do you want to do 90? Do you want to do 80? Do you want to do 90 or 80% of the new jobs only? What do you think? So they have to maintain, you certainly want them to maintain where they were at prior, right? You don't want them to go below that. So it would be to maintain 100% of where they were at and then 80% of what's promised, or? Or do you want to raise it and then we reserve the right? We don't have to claw back if they're at 89%.
Well, it kind of says that already, right? It was subject to review and possible enforcement, so it gives you that wiggle room.
Yeah.
I think it should, for what it's worth, I think it should be maintain what you had when you started the project, and then 90% of what you promised after 3 years. Or you could go, 80, first year is 80, next year is 85, the last year is 90, something like that. That's
The
just
only
more
reason I would hesitate on that, Rick, is because they also work up their numbers. So like,
Yeah.
again, somebody
make
could
it-
come to
I
us
agree
and
with you.
say, year one is 5 employees, year 2 is 10, year 3 is 15.
Right.
So then they kind of do their own gradual.
It should be definitely 100% of the original jobs.
Right.
Yep.
That should definitely stay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then whatever future jobs could be according to the economy, according to COVID, according to this, according to that could change.
Right. And that's the good language that Rick was bringing up, that we have will be subject to review. Again, we have the leeway. We understand if a pandemic happens and something terrible happens, but right.
Yeah, I think if we go 90% and we look at a project that's under, again, there's flexibility, we're reasonable people, there may be circumstances, but at least it gives us room to work. I mean, if we set the bar at 80% and they start going down to 7, I mean, that's just a slippery slide really quick. It's a quick slide. And I think at 90%, it gives us more opportunities to honestly flag a project that may be struggling, understanding that, and then have conversations.
I
I agree. Yeah.
Go ahead, Rose. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all right. I was going to say the one other thing is, like, when we do the cost benefit analysis, when a project comes to us, we do it at 100%. So if they come down to 80, that's a huge jump. And maybe that's the cost benefit analysis doesn't make sense.
Well,
You know?
how about again, utilizing the phrase at the discretion of the board? We turned around, we had these boutique hotels. They didn't have the jobs. It wasn't the economy's fault. It was their fault.
Yeah.
So don't lock ourselves in to verbiage that lets everybody run away from their problem.
Right.
I mean, you could seriously even say 100%, because that's what they promised. And then again, it's at the discretion. Or 95. I think it makes sense to certainly raise it from the 80.
No, you're right. You're right.
Well, I mean, if we're pacing a cost benefit ratio, right, on 100%, then the consistency in that and expectations should be, I think, aligned.
Are the applicants, the people, that just crazy question. Are they aware, do they understand what clawback means?
Yes, but they're also aware of the 80% in there.
Okay, so there you go. So the higher the better, and
Yeah.
then it gives us the opportunity, because we're a good sharp board. We work rationally with people. So the higher it is, and then it's at the discretion of the board, and we just have to be able to write a narrative and stay consistent. What do you think, Rick?
I agree. I'd like 90 or 95 and just have the verbiage at the discretion of the board, which is kind of there already,
Mhm.
subject to review and possible enforcement action at the discretion of the board. I like 90. It's reasonable. But 95, 100 is just, well, that's the expectation.
Well, 90 is reasonable, and I think it's not 80, that's for sure.
Yeah, 80 was always too low, but
I really like that we have it that you at least maintain your original, and then the 90 or whatever percent you go with, we're already ahead of where we were.
Well, we're not caught in a loop. It's like that jerk with the hotel who says, I can't find anybody. There's other businesses that meet and exceed the jobs. And again, this is a good board for calling bullshit on people.
Well,
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say, I also think it's important. I really do have applicants that come in and say, well, I'm going to make up the number. I know that if I put 100, that means I only need 80. Like, they know that when they fill out the
You know what?
application.
Never too high or never too low. You're not doing yourself a favor when you're undervaluing something or overvaluing. Be realistic
Yeah.
with the amount of jobs that you can create.
Yeah, it's a
You
disincentive.
read that how people are so, regardless of where you stood on the Kingstonian, we as a board know that Joe Benora and his group aren't responsible for 14 jobs. They're responsible for 50 jobs or whatever it may be.
yeah.
Yeah, it's 40, yep.
If you've agreed with a landlord to pay $1,000 a month in rent, you've agreed to pay $1,000 a month in rent. You don't say,
Right.
well, I'm going to pay 800 this month, So, I mean, you have to, except when COVID, you never know what you're going to get. But, I think that if they agreed to something for what they're getting, we're giving them all these things in place of that. So let's keep it at 100. And then for whatever they're gaining, which they've promised they'd gain, then we take the percentage. To me, that makes sense because we're giving them, they should be giving us back what we're asking for.
Devil's advocate, what if it's like, I mean, I guess you probably don't want to wait 2 years to find out. Because I was going to say, what if you say, anything under the 100% of what they promise, and then if it happens again in year 2, but maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe it's just better to stick with 1 year and 90% of the new number.
We're typically, if there's an issue in the first year, I can tell you what's going to happen with this board. We're going to all say, well, it's kind of like growing pains. Let's see what happens next year.
Yep.
So if you really want to help them, but then keep the onus on them, you use a cumulative. Meaning that if they say 40 jobs, but they only did 20 or they only did 30. So maybe the cumulative has got to be, the next year, if you had 50 jobs and 30, then that's 80 and it's 40. I don't know, but I don't think I always think we should have the opportunity to be as punitive as we want to be, right?
Well, like Rose says, they know they can do 80%.
Yeah.
They know they can get away with it.
No,
So that's there in the writing, they can get away with it. So.
We change the number and we leave it at our discretion.
yep. I think that's right. All right, so 100% maintaining existing jobs and 90% for projected new jobs.
Now, is this just for the projects moving forward? The new ones coming on board?
Is this gonna, I have to just flat out ask here, are you intending to include any projects that have not closed or projects that have not been approved?
Well,
I think projects that haven't closed.
yeah, but we change, we change our matrix, we do this, we do that. As we go along. So I don't think you need to be grandfathering everybody in and saying, well, it's 80.
Yep, their closing documents have to say it. So their closing documents say 80%. So we have to make sure, for example, the Kingstonian or Ferias are written to say whatever we wanted to say now.
So how did that allow us to work with an applicant, when the greenhouse or the hotel, when any of those people came in, if that's what their documents said?
Theirs said 80%, they were below 80%.
That's what I mean, but how did that allow us to work with them as opposed to prohibiting us to try to make it amenable and keep them moving forward? You get what I'm saying?
Right. Well, I think it's the not less than issue, right? So we can't do anything if they're not below 80, but we have discretion if they're below 80. So here we would just have to change it to be 90% is our discretion.
Fine, 90% works for me. If the chair wants a motion from somebody, I'm not a member.
All right. And so we're in agreement also that it would be for projects that are in the queue or have not closed yet.
True.
This new.
I agree.
Yes. Okay. Just want to make sure we're in agreement with that as well. Faye?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think I need a motion, correct?
I'm just going to say there's one more page if there was anything else anybody wanted. So it's a big policy, page 48.
Sure is.
It has Jimmy's Ferries here on part C. The enforcement action has the shall include but not limited to the following.
Excellent.
So I think that works. Unless there's something you guys see, it should be in there. But I think that makes sense.
No, that works.
Okay, so then the motion would be for all of the changes that we discussed, right?
Yeah, let's just clarify those changes for
I
the
was just
motion.
gonna say, do you want me to clarify
Yeah.
what they were before you make the motion? Because I wrote them all
Yes.
down. Okay, give me one sec. So, sorry, page 46 is missing for me.
I think we started with section 3.
Yeah, I got it here. Sorry, page 45. So it was under section 3.
Yep.
B5, 31 days. B6, 31 days. Compliance, that we would check the site, do the annual site visits every year, not every 2 years. That's section 4A3 reflects what we actually do and ask for the gross wages and the number of hours summarized by employee. And then under enforcement, section 5B 1, that we say they maintain at least the original number at the start of the project plus 90% of the new hires.
Yes, I'll make a motion for that.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then Rose, this goes to Ariel, right? Just for review before.
Joe Scott, yes.
Joe Scott. Ooh, yeah, wow.
I was gonna say,
Gotta get that
we'll never
name
get
out
it
of
back.
the brain.
You're not missing him, are you, Diane?
Very much so, Jimmy. You knew it, didn't you?
See that forlorn look in your face.
I do. It's true. Yeah.
Diane, did you want to keep going or did you want to stop and save the rest and then go to CRC or?
I think this would be a great time to stop, save the rest. I don't think there's anything within these other policies that are burning. So why don't we do
No.
that?
there is one thing, Diane,
Oopsie. Yep.
in the one policy though, but I guess we can still attack that. There's just some number changes, on the percentages in the one policy, the labor policy, local construction labor policy. So you just have to, we just got to make sure we're not sending this out and we're addressing the 3 points. Okay.
So why don't we do that? Should we go through that now? And no.
The reason I put that one at the end was because we had discussed the local labor policy being wrapped into a larger policy for
Correct.
local purchases, et cetera. And I was working with Joe Scott to get copies of what he has from other IDAs. So,
Okay, just don't want to have it, our UTEP set up one way. We don't want this policy reading different. That's all.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So we should probably move that up to the front for our next audit meeting then for the IDA.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine we're almost done going through them all finally.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll move that to the top. I know. Well done. Thanks, gang. Appreciate it. All right. I'm assuming, are there any public comment?
There's nobody in the meeting.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
All right, I have to get Aaron to shut up.
Diane, I'm gonna drop off for the CRC. I have a 12:30 planning board workshop